Okay, so it's been a week of grinding, 7 days of playing nothing but ladder, and I've made some progress. I lost some points. I think I've lost about 50 MMR in total, but that was less than I was expecting to lose, so I'm happy with that. But I've identified a lot of weaknesses. I know where I suck now. Apparently I'm really bad at TVP, so I need to start working on becoming a better player. This means I need to research some builds and start actually training. Now, if there's one thing I know about being successful when it comes to training, it's that you need a montage. So, cue the music.
I lose my fight, that scares me. It's been so long since I could feel rolling through this empty field. Broken songs, they never heal. Oh, why do you always win? Why do you always win? Oh, why do you always win? Why do you always win? Why do you always win? Why do you always
Hold on a second there. As much as that little montage was really fun to make, I don't feel like anything I did in it was actually training, except for maybe the studying of Beyond, but even then within 5 minutes of ladder games, I'd completely forgotten everything I'd seen, and I just went back to playing my normal style. Now the point I'm trying to make here is I think there's a really big disparity between what we consider training in sports and what we consider training in esports. And I really think it's worth talking about, especially if you want to improve. As an example, I used to play a lot of football when I was a kid. Now that's soccer for you Americans. And I was never really any good, but I did used to play for a local boys team. And every week we'd have an hour training session, and 45 minutes of that hour would consist of practicing individual skills, such as shooting or passing, dribbling, tackling, or just focusing on physical fitness. And at the end you'd play a 15-minute match to put everything into use and see how you'd improved. Then every Sunday you'd play a match, an official match, against another local boys team. Now let's compare that to the sort of general esports populace. Now I'm not talking about the pros or the people who take the game really seriously, because they probably have their own training regime. I'm talking about sort of the everyday person who plays the ranked ladder, the ladder system, the matchmaking system, over and over again, every day, but they're getting confused as to why their rank isn't going up despite constantly playing. Now, I believe playing the ranking system on whatever game you play, Counter-Strike, League of Legends, Overwatch, StarCraft, I believe just playing the ranking system to be the least efficient way to actually get better at the game. I believe this for two reasons. Firstly, the most important part of a match usually happen very rarely. And now let's use a StarCraft example. I'm really bad at Terran vs Protoss late game engagements. I just seem to always lose them, even though Terran's supposed to be considered overpowered versus Protoss right now. I can't figure out how to win, and that's because I play them so rarely. Protoss are rare on ladder these days, and most games end before the 10-minute mark, so at most, I get to practice TVP late game engagements maybe once a day, and that's just not a good way to practice something. Anything I learn from that, I will have forgotten the next time I play it. And considering whoever wins that fight will most likely win the entire game, it's something that I feel I should really be practicing a lot more regularly than once a day. The second reason I feel this way is because with a ranking system, you're only ever playing against or with people for the team games that are at the same rank as you. That means they're probably making the same mistakes as you. That means you can't really get a good idea of what it is you're doing wrong because everybody else around you is doing the same things wrong. There's definitely better ways you can be spending your time if you want to get better at a game. Now I'm going to use Counter-Strike as an example because it's something I used to spend a lot of time training when I was a kid. I used to wake up an hour before school and play just to practice individual skills so I could get better. And the new Counter-Strike, Global Offensive, I think out of all the competitive games out there, has the best set of resources for improving individual skills. Now, I would have friends ask me how to get a higher rank in Counter-Strike, and I would always tell them the same thing. If you want to get a higher rank in Counter-Strike, playing on the ranked system is the least important way of improving your rank. There's so many tools in Counter-Strike that allow you to focus on individual skills. There are aim training maps, there's many different aim training maps, there's reflex maps, there's recoil training maps, there's movement training maps, there's utility training map, there's pre-fire maps, everything you can think of, there's a map that allows you to practice that individual skill. And if all that's not enough, then there's a website called hltv.org that has just an absolute unlimited supply of replays from professionals and high-level players that you can download and watch anytime. And every time you watch one of the replays, there's 10 different players you can watch to learn from. So what I want to do for this video is try and apply that mentality to StarCraft. And in this episode, I want to come up with a list of ways I can work on individual skills for StarCraft that will be much more time efficient and will help me improve a lot quicker than if I was just playing the ladder over and over again. So I turned to Reddit to get some advice, and there was a lot of helpful suggestions. However, most of them were the kind of things that you really need to do to get up to Masters level. After that, a lot of them lose their effectiveness. But there was definitely a few suggestions I want to bring attention to. The first thing I want to mention is the multitasking trainer. Someone mentioned it, and I actually have a lot of experience with this map. Back in the beta, I was a Copper level noob. Now, Copper League doesn't even exist anymore. But by the second season after release, I'd made it to a decent level in Masters, and I owe pretty much all of that progress down to the multitasking trainer. Between the beta and the release, there was about a month of downtime where you couldn't play the game, but you could play this multitasking trainer. And so that entire month, I played that map for at least an hour every single day. And as soon as the game got launched, I was at such a higher level than I was before. So if there's any lower level players out there who are struggling to get promoted, give this map a try. Just go to the arcade section and search multitasking trainer. It's the Legacy of the Void one. It's really worth it. It really does help. The second thing, and this is especially for any Terran players out there, is micro training maps, specifically splitting Marines against Banelings. Now, I tried a few of the micro training maps, they weren't that great, but any Marine micro map against Banelings is really worth doing. In TVC, being able to split your bio against Banelings and Zerglings can change the outcome of every fight. It can make it so that when you're behind, you can still win fights. And if you're not splitting properly, you can be ahead in macro and army supply, but you still die to Banelings just rolling over your army. It's really worth learning, and it's a really powerful tool to have. The last suggestion is finding practice partners. Now, I've never really had a practice partner. I've always played this game solo. It's why I got into StarCraft, because you didn't need a team to be able to play it and practice. But I think it's about time I find someone to play with, because having a practice partner means you can practice the same matchup over and over again. The biggest problem with ladder is that you might play a Terran versus Zerg, watch your replay and see what you were doing wrong. Then you queue up for a new game and you get a Terran versus Protoss. And by the time you play a Zerg again, you've completely forgotten everything you learnt by watching the replay. Another really great perk from having a practice partner is you can load replays from a specific point and figure out if there was a different way you could play it that would allow you to win. Or you could reload from just before a big engagement and try different things in the engagement. You could practice being more aggressive with your ghosts, or stutter stepping a bit more, or splitting better. All of this stuff you can try over and over again until you find a way to beat that Protoss army that you didn't know about. I think those 3 things are enough to keep me going for a while. But I'm not really content with it. I feel like there must be something more I could be doing. Now, I'd love to get hold of a Korean pro who used to live in one of those team houses and ask them what they would do. Although, to be honest, I feel like they'd keep it secret. I reckon they had some really good training techniques and training methods that allowed them just to be better than everyone else. Except for, obviously, if they did, they wouldn't tell everyone what they were doing, because they want to keep it to themselves. I mean, it makes sense. Either way, I now have some kind of idea on how I can use my time to improve a lot quicker. I'm going to use that multitasking trainer to try and work on my map awareness. It's one of my biggest weaknesses. I always lose games from Zergling run-bys or warp prisms or dropships that I don't see coming. I get too focused on my army and I forget to look at my minimap. So I'm going to use that multitasking trainer to try work on that. I'm going to use the micro trainer to try work on my Marine and Marauder splits. Now, while I think my splits are okay in TVC, I'm terrible at splitting my bio against disruptors in TVP. Every time my enemy goes for disruptors, I lose because they just get massive hits on my bio. I'm terrible at it. So that's what I'm going to work on with the micro trainer. And lastly, I'm going to try and find a similar skilled Protoss player to practice against regularly. My biggest weakness right now is TVP. For some reason, I really suck at it. Even though Terran is supposed to be an advantage right now, I just can't find where that advantage is. So having a Protoss player that I can discuss this with, play against, and then practice with over and over again will really help. My biggest problem is the engagements. I always suck at fighting big Protoss armies. So being able to load from a replay and practice that over and over again will be a massive help for me. I just got to try and find someone willing to do this first. That should be enough to keep me going for a couple of weeks. I'm going to split my StarCraft time into 2 halves. One half I'm going to be focusing on these training techniques, then the other half I'm going to be playing on ladder to try and get GrandMaster. Hopefully this will be effective. That's it for this episode. I'm really sorry it went on for so long. I usually try to keep them shorter, but I guess when it comes to time efficiency I just have a lot to say, which ironically wasn't very time efficient of me. Anyways, it's over now. Before I go though, I quickly want to say 2 things. Firstly, if there's any Tier 1 Masters Protoss players or above who would like a Terran practice partner, please leave me a comment below because I really need a practice partner and I don't know where to look. I'm sure there's somewhere out there to find practice partners that's still active, I just don't know of it. I'll look into it and I'll let you guys know if I find anything. Secondly, during the making of this episode, I played a couple of ranked games to get some clips and I actually won those games. And I made it into Contender League, which isn't an actual promotion, it's just a list of people who are in contention for GrandMaster, but it is the highest I've ever been. I mean, I'm at the bottom of that league, I was like 197 out of 200 or something, but it means you're basically within a 10-game win streak of being in GrandMaster, which is awesome, although obviously, at this level, winning 10 games in a row is near impossible. So I'm still a long way off, but this is the highest I've ever been, and I'm really happy about that. It feels good. Okay, that's it for this episode. I'm going to get back to training.